Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother asarimhotep with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. And today we have a very special guest with us, all the way out of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Dr. Mpay Kemboly. And I'm probably saying it incorrect, so he'll correct me when he comes on. He is an Egyptologist, a theologian, and philosopher, and we're going to discuss one of his major works and some of the latest works that he has been doing since he wrote that initial text. So, all of that and more when we return in just a moment. And we are back. So, I want to welcome each and every one of you for joining the conversation. And make sure that you hit the like button and the subscribe button if you are new to this channel. And before I bring on my guests, I just want to read a brief bio of our esteemed guest. And Dr. Mpay Kemboly has studied philosophy, theology, ancient Egyptian language, and Coptic. He also speaks several African and European languages. He completed his PhD in Egyptology at the University of Oxford. He returned to the Democratic Republic of Congo in Africa, where he is a Roman Catholic priest, a member of the religious order of the Jesuits. He has also studied in Kinshasa and Rome. For this, uh, we are going to also mention that he has written a book. I'm holding it in my hand now, but just in case you can't see it because of the camera effect, it is The Question of Evil in Ancient Egypt. And I just want to say that, the last name seems kind of familiar for a lot of y'all on the channel, but I want to assure you that this is not our good friend Jean-Claude Mboli, who wrote the text Origin of African Languages, and who wrote this new text in French, Epopee or Bantu epic. What does it say? From the Great Lakes to the Mediterranean. That is another author, and we have had him on the show before, and hopefully we'll have him back on soon to talk about his latest text. So this came out just last month. So I'm currently reading it so that I have some good questions to ask him. But this is another Mboli, a Kiamboli, if I'm saying it correctly. And he is an Egyptologist, and he has gracefully accepted our invitation to have a conversation about his life and the work that he does in Africa in regards to theology, relations between or interfaith relations and the like. And so I want to first and foremost thank Dr. Vanessa, who we've also had on the show, who I know personally, for getting the invitation to him, because he was in Dakar for the Sheikh Anta Diop celebration, centennial celebration, which I wish I was there. But he was there and he did a presentation, so maybe we'll have a discussion about that as well. So, without further ado, I want you to put your hands together, whatever you do, and welcome Dr. Kemboly to the Mbongi. Peace and blessings to you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, how do you properly pronounce your name?
Mpay Kemboly.
Mpay Kimboli. All right.
Kemboly.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm.
Well, for since this is your first time on this program, can you tell us a little bit about where you are from? What ethnic group do you belong to, and how did you get interested in Egyptology? You know, what was your education before the PhD? What were you interested in before even getting into Egyptology?
Thank you. Ethnic group to which I belong. It's a bit difficult, really, in the context of Congo. But my parents, my ancestors, uh, come from a region along the river Congo, almost opposite the other Congo. So, river people, not very far away from Kinshasa. It's north of Kinshasa, about 300 kilometers. The region called Yumbi and Bolobo. And then, by myself, I grew up in Kinshasa. I went to a Jesuit school, primary school and secondary school. And then, of course, I learned things about the world, Egypt, and the Roman history, Greek history. But I didn't make the connection, really the connection between Africa and Egypt. Once I learned history of Egypt, it was as Egypt belonged to another continent. Until when I studied my philosophy, says in 1988, I had a professor, a lecturer, who challenged our interpretation of African history. So then we had African philosophy, and then we studied our our journey of African philosophy by Egypt. And then when myself, I became let's say, assistant. So I taught African philosophy starting from Egypt. That time I had the chance to have the book of Obenga published, uh, 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 African, let's see, it's here somewhere. Anyway, the pharaonic, what is the philosophy of Africa. And then, but I didn't know how to read it, what is hieroglyphics. So when I was sent to Rome to study theology. I had an inscription to, I applied to Biblical Institute. And then I started learning first, Coptic and then hieroglyphics. And from there, of course, after 2 years, I went to Oxford to do my my MPhil, my master degree. And after 2 years, I finished and then I embarked myself on a DPhil program. That is how I came interested to history of Egypt.
Indeed, and I should have corrected the flyer because I forgot. When you go to Oxford, they have a DPhil instead of
Mhm.
PhD behind the name. You know, so
Ye- ye-
I'm
ye-
a I'm a correct that later. But
that- mm.
you mentioned Dr. Teofilo Benga,
Yes.
and you know, over here in the United States, at least in the African Center community, he is very well known, and especially along the philosophy stint. And you know, we spoke of Diop, meaning Dr. Shekant Diop, uh, but it seems to be coming out of the Congo in general. A lot of researchers that that deal in philosophy and ancient Egypt. And one of the earliest, besides Obinga, that I was introduced to was Dr. Mubabinge Bilolo.
That's
Not
right.
sure if you're familiar with him.
Yes, I
Uh,
know him. Yes. Mm.
and and he's introduced me to a number of philosophers and theologians coming out of Congo. And I'm putting together a text in honor of Dr. Bilolo, um, who I've gotten to know over the past about 13, 14 years now. Actually, no, it's about 15, 16. Uh, but um, you said something critical at the beginning of the conversation, and that was when you first started studying ancient Egypt, it seemed like it belonged to another continent. But
Right.
once you started getting into like African, I guess, religion and philosophy, you started to see a strong connection. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like what are some aspects of ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, however you want to say it, and what you've been able to uncover studying the philosophy and theology of the continent of Africa in general, and if anything more specifically to the Congo.
Well, there are many aspects. Uh, First of all, it is on the line of time. When you read uh, some Greek writers themselves, they will
Okay, it seems
state
like
that they learn some of. So I was saying
I'm sorry.
yes, a bit of a connection.
Yeah,
Right,
it paused just a little bit, but if you can start over, go ahead.
that's right. So I'm saying that if you read some of the texts written by Greek writers themselves, they will say that they were students of Egyptians and also of Chaldeans. That means the region now around Iraq and Iran. And then when you start philosophy, you're studying from sixth century, fifth century by people like Hesiod and Pythagoras and Thales and so forth. So for us, at least for me as African, I say, why should I forget what the Greek themselves state about themselves? It means I have to go first to Egypt, and then I will follow the Nile as it flows. So I will go from the upper regions of Ethiopia and Sudan. And mind you that Sudan is not far away from the Congo. It means that I could just, as I said to some of my friends earlier, I could just walk or, ride a horse, from the Congo to Egypt. And then I don't even need to cross the Mediterranean Sea or the Red Sea. That's one thing. So for me, it was critical to have a bigger lot of time. Not my thinking in Africa didn't start only from outside. It started on the continent and mainly in Egypt, in around Ethiopia. Let's say along bigger rivers, I think, because now archaeological data may also show that some people, great civilizations grew up around those valleys. This is one. Now, when myself, I started now, addressing issues, I could see some connections, also some differences. Maybe these connections are not well studied. Let me take one. Then the void. Let's say the void in Greek is called kenos, and that
Seems to be a connection issue again. All righty.
Of Isyod.
Hold on. It was a connection issue again.
Yes,
It started right when you said the void.
that's right.
Okay.
So then you see, when you read at the beginning, there was chaos. That is what Isyod said in the first line of his theogony. Now, if you take some text, let's say Heliopolitan, as we saw, let's say in the book of Shu, so coffin text from 75 until 81, you have the idea of the void. That void that allows at least the beginning of the world. It means a bit of space. You have a tomb, and then you have Shu and Maat. And then you see when you have the representation of Shu, you will see Shu in the middle of 8 gods, that is the He gods. That the space expands between the sky and, let's say, Geb, the earth. That space, it's almost like a chaos. It allows life to come into being. You have the same idea also in the Bible. You have the void. So the void is not just a deficit, it's not a lack of something. It is something that is difficult to determine. Now, if you go to Greek again, philosophy, you have the pairon, that is not determined, that is too vast and, undetermined, but also not fixed. It means something big, immense. So you have that idea there, but not really well addressed for us. But if you go further, you will see that the idea, I wrote an article on it. That was an article I wrote in honor of John Baines, and then from the idea of chaos to order. So you will leave the chaos as chaotic thing to chaos as opening, aperture. That means a chance, that brings life. It is something that you have in our Egyptian text. This is only one issue. So you have the noon. If we take another text, if you jump, you go to let's say the Book of the Dead, and the Declaration of Innocence, it was called, means Book of the Dead, chapter 125. Some of the let's say sins that the dead person would like not to commit will say, I didn't know that is that which exists not. It means I didn't know the non-existence. And then you have another lesson of it from another the papyrus. You would say, I didn't know evil. It means, it may suggest for ancient Egyptians, non-existent and evil may be equivalent in some under some circumstances. So you have another issue about non-existence. In Greek, non-existence, the evil. But you have that already in ancient Egypt, you see. So you have many issues, many connections we may find between Greek and, let's say, Israel, ancient, let's say, biblical Israel, and Africa, especially in that. And then, as you mentioned, in December, I was, in Dakar. I tried to show the parallelism between the story of Horus and Set, that story, with another story I have here in the Congo, about Ilunga Kalala. You have really, one, A prime, B prime, and so forth. So almost, and then I had the question, how could you explain the similitude between your story, and that of Egypt, between Horus and Set, given that you have that long span between Egypt, that was, 25th century BC, and then my story, that may go maybe from, let's say, around 14th or 15th century AD. So we have some issues there that needs to be, deepened to not just to say about, the race, but we have many issues that we may raise and then make our case. Certainly, I'm sure will bring some similitude.
Indeed. Uh, your analysis, and I think the text that you were referring to was or is titled. Um, I just had it. The idea of chaos in ancient Greece and Egypt, from
That's right.
hiatus to disorder and order. Uh,
Yes. Mm.
and it reminds me of, now for me in my personal journey,
Mm.
what started making me make connections from ancient Egypt to um, Congo
Mm.
specifically, in Bantu cultures and languages, was reading the text of another Congolese,
Mhm.
the late Dr. Kimbwadende Kiabonseki Fukiao.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
you familiar with him?
Oh yeah, I have the book just behind me here.
Uh,
Just here. That- That's
yes,
it is I think it's so it is in a so that is it is in the Kinmanyanga.
yes,
Yes. So and then the book itself that so
yes,
that
yes. I have that as well.
yes.
Uh, when I started reading his books in articles, uh, I felt this underlying substrate in terms of the ideas and philosophies that permeated between both Bantu Congo culture and philosophy with that of ancient Kemet. And at the time, like in early 2000, 2001, I did not have the linguistic skills to make particular kinds of connections in the way that a like a Theophilo Bingo or a Diop or a, or Omen Digi or a Oscar Perfume and others, could do. But as I started developing that skill set, I started to do the linguistic comparisons between the two regions, and come to find, in my research, that the Bantu Congo, whether it be Chiluba, whether it be Kikongo, whether it be Bassa, um, even all the way down to Isizulu, they provide very good information and for explaining um, by regular means of correspondences between the two, sound meaning correspondences between the two languages and cultures, that they actually can explain each other in various ways, which suggests for me that there is a common ancestry. And I know there's all human beings for the most part come out of Africa, but there seems to be a closer connection between Congo ideas and ancient Kemet than I'm able to detect between the Levant and Arabia and ancient Kemet, even though they try to put Kemet in Near Eastern studies. And I wanted to know, like, have you done, were you able to make any language connections between ideas or whatnot,
Well, I
between
think
the two areas?
certainly the Bantu is not just the Bantu Congo people. The Bantu as I don't like that word usually, really, because there's again a colonial, because it means human beings, and it means we are human beings, and others are not human beings. But anyway, we understand what we mean by that word, and yes, there are many studies on the Bantu. But I live in a community where we have almost 15 different African nations and cultures. You have people from Chad and people from Nigeria. They also pretend, they have connection with Egypt, and they are very close. Just the other side, westwards. Then you go to Chad, so they have connections. You go down a little bit around, what is Chad Lake, Nigeria, also there. I think that idea of there is a genetic, you know, uh, let's say, affiliation between ancient Egypt and many African countries, I would say languages and cultures, it is true. But we have to deepen it with evidence, not just to proclaim it. That's why I think scholars need to do great jobs to bring about evidence, not just to proclaim it. You see, for example, going back to Foucault, the word for the afterlife, if I mean after my life here, that place is called Kalunga. Kalunga, it's also represented as water, means immense water, watery region. But the word Kalunga means I can translate it as a place of perfection, where there is self-sufficiency. It means there, when we go, we are really realized and accomplished as human being. They say also that the dead or spirits emerge from there. You see, and you have idea of Noon. The Noon as being a deity, being a watery region. Even the word Duat, you means when the sun sets, that it goes down the region Duat, the space and time of regeneration, and then it come back again in east side of the horizon and anew and young. So when you finish our life here, you go to Kalunga or Kilunga, a place of perfection, a place of self-sufficiency, a place of beatitude. So you have also in the Noon, that when Osiris said Atum, we say, well, at the end, everything will be dismantled and the world will go back again as it started. You see, it means it started in that water region. So I have ideas there with the Congo. And I have friends who are doing research, archaeological excavations, to expand that region from the Congo. It's even called, I think, Congo or the Bantu, the Congo Bantu data, something like that, well addressed in South Africa. But the same may be true about other regions of Africa. For example, when I was in Senegal, of course, friends will say, look, we have the same, parallelism here between ancient Egypt and uh, Senegal. Does it? You have one affair, Congo cosmology graphics, yes. Longa, yes. Kalunga, yes. Fire, complete, immense, master. Yes, you see, you have to complete, you have immense transformation, but you see, convenience. Yomelunga means it's enough, it's sufficient, yes. So it is you who wrote that or someone else? Yeah, yes. Oh, Kabunseki Yafukiao, yes. Nganga, yeah. Manyanga, that is a Manyanga. Yes. So from Manyanga, you need an N before G. Yes. From Manyanga, Congo. Nganga, the creator. Yes, that's it. So I-N and then A-N. Yes. G-A. Manyanga. This is a region in the lower, close to the ocean. Yes. That's it. No more hearing. I don't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Uh,
Yeah, yes. I
what I
couldn't hear
was
you.
yes, what I
Mm,
was saying is that
mm.
what I was showing is that there's a phenomenon in linguistics that we call paronymy, and this
Yes.
is when the ancients believed that words that sounded alike went
Mm,
together or they come from the same
mm,
source. Now, that may be true historically or not, but this has been a source for a lot of cosmology, theology, and culture throughout history across the continent of Africa. So I'm showing how these different words, so like I have these from the dictionary and grammar of the Congo language, you can see these different words with lunga in it,
that's right.
and and how they came to be associated with Kalunga,
That's right.
which Fukiao says is at one time, the water that you mentioned, but also the 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 fiery force that exploded in the chaos. That so this is the grapheme from his book. So this is also Kalunga that blew things up because there's a word lunga that means a smithy, right? A
Yes.
forge. So you're
Mhm.
seeing how they're putting all these terms together and creating this cosmology. And then I go to show how the word Kalunga is actually a variant of the word Ma'at, or how we pronounce it. That's Egyptology speak. But we can
Mhm.
show by regular sound meaning correspondences between Kikongo and Egyptian, which I call Chikam after Bilolo. Um,
Yes.
these
Bilolo.
these these terms, right?
Mm.
So I just wanted to so like in Kikongo, the what we would call Ma'at in ancient Egyptian would be in Lungu, justification, a state of being just, justice, righteousness, blameless, completeness. But also that perfection and completeness that you mentioned earlier. I don't have it on this slide, but I can show that this same consonant sequence also is true for the TM sequence in Egyptian,
Mhm.
meaning the atom, the completely complete being. So atom is linguistically connected to the word lunga and kalunga, meaning perfection and the like. But I don't want to go into that. I just wanted to show people the kalunga that you were talking about. Um,
That is. But there
you
is,
know,
excuse me, answer,
yeah,
but
yeah,
there is
yeah.
another nuance, but it's not really mentioned. Lunga in not only in the Kikongo, let's say other, what is it, very close. It means also necropolis. It's close, the place of the dead. You don't know. I'm going to Lunga. It means I'm going to the ancestors. I'm going to the dead. You see, the place of completeness, of selfishness and beatitude. Of course, there is the watery regions. You see, and then if for example, in that story of Ilunga Kalala, you see another word, Ilunga. That is quite the same roots. But that king, one day, they killed him, they murdered him. So they dug, his cemetery. So they displaced, so they removed, so they changed the riverbed, and then they dug, the burial, and then they put him there. So he went back to the primeval waters, so that nobody could say it is there that the king got, you know, uh, you know, uh, let's say, what is the word? Um, well, anyway, well, you put to death. So another that nuance of going to the waters of primeval order and the water of ancestors. And of course, there is another sad story of it, because when the white people came, they came, at least if we are in the Congo, they came from the ocean, and then when a dead person, he comes back white, you see, because the the living person is reddish or if black, but when you are a spirit, you are clothed in linen, so in white linen. So because they were white and coming from the ocean, many people are saying that the ancestors they're coming back. Unfortunately, they were not really our ancestors. So it was a very pathetic, misunderstanding. How you interpret in a way that it's very sad. So you pretend that it's your ancestors. Instead, they came to fetch you and to take you from Africa to bring you to the hurricane regions of West Indies and so forth. I'm sorry.
Well, I want to, before I get on your new uh, research and interests, to talk about your book, uh, the quest, the question of evil in ancient Egypt. I don't know if that blur is blocking everything, but just in case, let me just do it this way. So yes, that's the
Yeah.
book there. The question of evil in ancient Egypt. So why? How did you get focused on the concept of evil? Why was that the center of your research for this particular text? And what were some of your conclusions? Um, or I guess what were your research questions? What were the motivation, and what were some of your conclusions of this particular text that we have on the screen?
Hmm. Thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to say, to give my honor to my supervisor, Dr. Mark Smith. My primordial quest was, as I did my MPhil there, so I worked on pyramid and coffin text, and then the title was Violence and Protection in Earlier Egyptian Text, let's say Egyptian mortuary or funerary text, I think, funerary text. So I worked on the question of violence and order in coffin text, and of course, before that, pyramid text. When I got accepted to do my DPhil, and I want to do something close to philosophy. It was the political philosophy of pharaohs because here in Africa people are
Hold on, it paused again, and right when it paused, it said you were talking about the political philosophy of, and then it.
pharaohs. Is that right? Of pharaohs, because I wanted to know pharaohs' power, pharaonic power, was so absolute in a way that there was no checks and balances, as some of the African leaders in the 20th century were pretending. It means that we in Africa, our traditional power is absolute, as if it was only dictatorship, you know. But then after 6 months, my supervisor said, Mpay, I have a question. I would like you to work instead of the question of evil, because he himself was working on the text Carlsberg Papyrus on the topic of solar rebellion. Of course, I didn't like it anyway, but after then I said, well, let me just start. So I found interest in that issue because the question of evil, it's really, for me, at the heart of our philosophy, our social philosophy in Africa here. When something isn't wrong, we say it's evil. What does it mean evil? If I don't find solution, let's say in the photo philosophy, it means in the daytime, people will go back to nighttime. Those issue of Nganga. It may explain where, maybe the spirit are not, they don't agree with you. So as if our life is not just material, it's also spiritual. If I stand on my dada leg as a Roman priest, again you have the question of evil. Or that we have that the prayer, deliver me from evil, deliver us from evil. It is almost a daily question. In not only in our Christian prayer, but you find it also in many African traditional religions. To not let someone enter the statue or the condition of evil, being evil. And then I said, where does it come from? And then that time, I had another professor, Franzen. You were also was addressing the question of evil, because also Asman, because that time, Egyptian literature was divided into those who were pretending that evil came about from the beginning as the other side of the differentiation process, But other, instead of saying evil was not primeval, the world was perfect, and that evil came about sometime later. But the question is, what does it mean sometime? So difficult to determine sometime. Sometime remains inside a gray zone. Indeed, it should be like that. It's difficult to say, yes, it happened, as if you have a timeline saying, well, the world started at 1 o'clock, and then 5 minutes past 1:15, and then evil came about. Difficult to understand, to say it. So, and then I say, well, I have to read anew these texts that other scholars were using. And then I came about. So it turns to me that it turns out that the conclusion, I didn't come to the same conclusion as that group of scholars who were saying that evil was in the beginning, from the beginning, as the other side or the dark side of the process of differentiation. I read texts, and then I saw that no, evil, it can be interpreted along the line of rebellion. So those that God created, his own children, rebelled against him, not just Geb or Shu, some of the texts, or like, some of the texts would say that all the gods rebelled against, the solar god, but also human beings. And among those human beings, of course, he mentioned Elias, Osiris, Seth, and even Osiris sometimes. Sometimes you have that sort 28, 25, papyrus may, allude to it, but I wrote in my text, but it depends on context. But it means that evil came about as a result not only of the gods, but also human beings. And not only human beings and the gods, but also other. And among those others, you have Apophis. But now Apophis, some of the Egyptians would say Apophis or Apopis was the counterpart of the solar, of the creator god. No, the text from Isna would say no, he's not. He is also a creation. So he was not created evil. It became evil after some time. So my reading is the world was created perfect, but as a result of some of the deeds, accomplished by the gods, also human beings, and then Apophis, of course, and then evil came about. And then Apophis represent a cosmic dimension of evil. Human beings represent the social, aspect of evil, and then other gods also the other aspect of evil. So my conclusion is, if we want to fight evil, you're allowed to do it. Don't complain too much about evil. Fight, do it, do what you have to do, and then you'll see what remains of evil, because there is always a leftover of evil. That is not a result of your goodwill or mine. But when you read text, God himself fight evil every day, as the sun over there, also down here. Down here you have Pharaoh, and then you have those social institutions that help the world to alleviate evil, to make the world a better place. But God didn't create evil as such. And then when I say that, people will say, I have a theological agenda. I want to justify God. You see, but this is how I came, with my reading of the text. So it's a poetic approach. Don't complain too much that the world is too too bad, but what are you doing? What are you doing to help the world to be a better place for everybody? Means you have to do, you have to act.
It begs the question, and I don't know if this was answered, or if this was asked and or answered in your text. But I just think about this, as my own kind of philosophical conundrum, so to
Mhm,
speak. And that is like, a concept exists in my mind because its opposite exists. Like there's a natural contrast. For example, like something is over there
mhm,
because something is right here.
mhm.
Right? Like over there in here has no meaning without the other. Up, there's no up without down, and the like. So with that in mind, how do we then approach the question of evil and its creation? Because I know, like in the text, you address the question of, was evil present in the
Mhm.
nun,
Yes,
right? The primordial
yes,
waters or whatnot. And so,
yes,
but if Ma'at exists,
it's
we
fed,
would think that Ma'at would be the opposite of
it's
Isfet,
fed.
evil,
Yes,
chaos, and the like, since she represents order. So
yes.
wouldn't, if she's in the beginning, wouldn't evil have to be in the beginning, even though it's a concept? It just didn't have agents to manifest it.
Well, you may have that dialectic approach that if Mahad existed, then it should have also its counterpart. But you need evidence to state it because you have atom, one becomes three. They have Shu and Tefnut. Even Mahad doesn't even it's not mentioned there, but it is our reading saying that Tefnut may represent Mahad. By me, Mahad itself is not on as cosmological line. You have Atum, Shu, and Tefnut. And then you have Geb and uh, Nut. You see? And then you have the four. You have what is the old, or what is Horus, of course, Osiris, Set, and then Isis and Nephthys. Some, texts will not even mention the old, is it uh, or Waru? Let's say the old. So it depends. But when you have also in the Manichaeist approach, you think it's theological. It's a no, it is the question of thinking. But my decision was I can only state things that are of which I have evidence, but I didn't have evidence saying that evil was there. But this is how people came to say yes, evil was a counterpart. But if you read text, you always have text saying I was alone. The creator was alone. No, nothing was beside him, not even in the wind. Nothing beside, nothing within it, because there is nothing that is beyond. At least he was alone, and, and he created everything from itself. That's why people will say, right, he was alone. But maybe as when he decided to multiply itself from getting from one to three and so forth, maybe as a dark side, as a not a voluntary act, maybe evil came about. That's why we may allow it. I think we can't say um, I will not be very absolute, but it is a possibility because the question of tychology, evil, is difficult to determine really. We only have suggestions and so forth, and so far as we have evidence to state one thing or the contrary.
You mentioned just now something that I do a compare and contrast with all the time, and I want to get your understanding of this. And that is, you just mentioned that creation from the Egyptian perspective was not ex nihilo, that uh, that everything is an evolution of the creator itself. So it is a manifestation of the creator itself. What are your thoughts on if there is a difference in your mind between that concept, and I find that throughout Africa, when it comes to their understandings of what we would in English call God, and the Abrahamic traditions, where there is God, but then it creates creation outside of itself, and if that causes any conflict, between the traditions from the Abrahamic perspective versus the indigenous African perspective.
No, I think even that concept of creation ex nihilo, it's really very late when you read that in the book of I think that book is with of wisdom, the book of wisdom. That was said that the book of wisdom is around 2nd century BC. And then some people will not even accept it as a canonical book, you see. But if you take you take all different ways of differentiation, means to bring about things from ancient Egyptian, you have creation as we put it, creation, but we know that the theologian would say creation is only in Israel, with bara, with ba, but others say are not creation. But if we say creation means to bring about things, you have that process by the will, shy, by the sweat, by the heart, by the word. So many, it's not just material. It means, so I think the idea of saying that God created everything from himself or from herself, it means he is really the starting point. Let's say like the Big Bang is him. Everything comes after him. You see? So then even in some part of Africa, you have that also. They will say is the Almighty, the creator of everything. Everything that happens in the world can't happen without God's, desire. Even the ancient Egyptian would say, everything is in the feast, in God's feast. If He releases it and everything happens, it means our lives is under, the grip, of the Creator, or the Almighty. You see, but now, how do we understand really? Because if everything depends on God, also evil. You see, that's also what the problem. So if everything of our lives, are we responsible of it or not? So there is a room where human beings are responsible. There is a room where they say, yes, it is not God, it is you, it is the world. That's why they say there is a lapse between what is the condition, the stage where the world was perfect, and then as a result of other things, and then evil comes about. And here, evil is here. So we feel evil here in our world, heart, evil heart, injustice, and all those, acrimonies we have. Here, there is a text, by the Congo cosmogony, called Luba cosmogony, that a small insect complained about God, say, God's creator, you did everything well and perfect, except one thing. That's why I can say that your world is not perfect. You didn't fix everything. Something is missing there. What is missing? He said, well, I complained because I lost my son. My son passed away. So death for some Africans or for many people is really that experience of evil. How is it that we lose those who have loved? You see, so the experience of death. So it's also experienced as evil.
I remember hearing Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson mentioning how he interprets death, and and I interpret what he stated in the sense that death in many respects gives more value to life.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you live forever, there's no incentive to want to do and learn anything because you have all the time in the world. But death brings about a sense of urgency to do things because you know that you have finite time. And I want to get your perspective on what you were just talking about, not necessarily from the Egyptians, but your idea of like the meaning and purpose of death in itself.
Mm-hmm. In my book, I think I have a passage where death is called really as a divinity. You see, death, as I said at the beginning, when the sun sets in eastern on the western horizon, now it goes down to the crocodile or to the Duat region to rejuvenate itself. It means that death or even in darkness, it's a rich region, a rich time. So it's a fruitful time where everything that the creator or everything that came about in the world needs to rest and then to take a fresh, new energies, so that the world would always stay, you know, uh, young and also as a space of new opportunities in life. So in that side, sorry, on that perspective, death is not a bad thing. I think it allows, at least it gives time, opportunities to those who will come after us to exist. Also, they make their own show. I don't believe that I would like to live longer and longer and longer, here, but I think it is a possibility that gives us, as you said, the feeling of your emergency, and then you have to do things sometime because I know that I have only that spell of time, and that gives me opportunity to live as a human being, and then to leave to others some good examples. You know, I don't, as I said once, not many African people really regret or are obsessed by death. I think we take it as a time that should come. Then you have your time to prepare and meet your fate or the mighty God. And then you you go to see your ancestors. You go to to be with God. So you go back to where you come from. So but it's not a dark zone. It's not a lack of horizon. It is another. There is a Jesuit here said, life is like death is like a moon. We just see this side of the moon, but that side also exists. And then the final silence is very rich. Is for those who are able to listen to that silence. So it is another experience, another side of life. It's not against life. It's the other side of life.
Indeed. Well, what have what research interest uh, has encapsulated or captured your mind since the production of this text here? What have you been working on? What new questions have you been asking?
Of course, as a lecturer, so I have to teach many subjects, but that remains in my mind is to expand that research to other areas of Africa, to see the question of evil in other cultures of Africa. This is one. Also, to see that genetic affinity between Egypt and the rest of Africa, not only on language, really on symbolic, on stories. Let's say, for example, that story of Ilunga Kalala and of Nyavingi, all those cosmogonic stories, also eschatological stories. Because stories like traditions. You see the funerals, the practices, not just text, not just word, but here you will see how things go happen. So this is how um, I'm planning. And then I worked on Maat, of course, and then I brought Maat in connection with Sebait, and also another thing is to re-examine those catalog of deeds and misdeeds.
Mhm. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, yes. So, and then using, for example, Africa. For example, I wrote an article, of grappling with the notion of evil in ancient Egypt. So I wanted, so in that study, so I tried to understand terminology of evil, not just Isfat. So you have words, Bin, Bud, Begosu, so and the source of evil and typology of evil, and then the protagonist of evil, and the tools defining evil. And then inspiring myself from uh, Jan Asman, who passed away recently. Then I define evil as laziness or refusal to act properly. You see, so I'm trying to move from metaphysical, what is it, aspect of evil to social aspect of evil, and as a result, how to act. So we need to, as I said, I would like to say, I invite people not to complain too much, so naked, complaining too much about the world instead of acting, and then you will see how the world may be. You see, so how I'm going now. So the social and political aspect of evil, of the question of evil, not just to complain how that the world is evil, but what do I do in order to help the world to be a better place, as I just said. This is one issue. Another one is, of course, bringing. So I study ancient Egyptian religion as the oldest African traditional religions. So as I'm working on dialogue, so and I use materials from Egypt as appropriate also to study one of the oldest African religion in the world and how that religion came into dialogue with Judaism, with Christianity, with Islam, also with other recent uh, spiritual and religious movement and wisdom traditions in Africa.
I wonder, have you heard of a South African author? He has long since passed away, but uh, by the name of Jordan Ngubani. Uh,
Uh, Nkobane, yes, working on what?
he wrote a book in 1979 titled "The Spirit of Conflict." Um,
97, 1967.
yeah, no, 1979.
Oh,
The
79.
Jordan Ngubani,
That's right.
um, and hold on,
Kobane.
1979. My bad. That's I'm moving ahead. The book was titled Conflict of Minds.
Mm-hmm.
And in the text, he introduces this Zulu word that I connect with the word isfet, but it's for
Mm.
them is isibuthe, which means the
It's a bit.
spirit of conflict.
Mm.
And he gives a good analysis, and I highly recommend that book. And I would love to, hear your insights on that text, because he does. So the text itself is an analysis on South African apartheid
Mm.
regime and the underlying philosophy and the conflict from the native, Africans versus the Europeans. So he's saying it's a conflict of minds. And then so he gives the ultimate framework for the Zulu philosophy, and theology, which shapes their attitudes and behaviors, and in contrast to what we find in Europe. But in there's a chapter that is just analyzing ancient Egyptian uh, philosophy and creation and the like, and he's paralleling that with his own native Zulu cosmogony and philosophy and all that, and showing how they are more congruent than what we're seeing in Europe. But he grapples that question of what we're saying evil, but the word that he uses isibute, which means what he translates as the spirit of conflict,
Mm.
and I equate that because it looks very similar to the word isfet. So I got to do some more analysis to see if they're actual
Mm.
cognates. But it would be interesting if they were. But that text, and I can send you this one because this is a professor's PhD dissertation. I don't know if you're familiar with darn it. He's out of Malawi, and uh, his hold on one second, because I can pull. I have his dissertation, and I have some unpublished Fukial too.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but this is there's Jordan, Dr. Kaikosa Kajangu. Are you familiar with him?
No, kakosi kachangu.
Kaikosa Kajangu.
Mm-mm.
His PhD dissertation was titled uh, "Beyond the Colonial Gaze: Reconstructing African Wisdom Traditions." And I think he's a good resource along those lines. But I would love. I can
Mm.
definitely send you that one. I don't think he's
Okay.
ever made that into a book. He's written
Mm.
some books since then, but he's an initiate into different African wisdom traditions, and so he
Mm.
kind of synthesizes what he's learned
Mm.
as a result of those experiences. And but I think along with what you just said, Jordan Ngubani is going to be a major source that I think that you can draw from the Zulu
Thank
folks.
you.
But I just wanted to say that. But I just we're coming to a close. I don't want to. I know you already had a long day, uh, and so but I wanted to bring it to a close. But I just wanted to say even before then that this has been a very enlightening
But
conversation. Oh, sorry. Go
allow
ahead. Go
me
ahead.
just one thing. I
Go
think
ahead.
the other side of it is not close to Egyptology, but Egyptology helped me understand African history of philosophy or of thought. For example, I do teach African philosophy. You see, when I do teach it, I start, from 16th century. I may start, of course, from 14, 25 centuries BC, but here it gives you materials and sort of freedom. What experience is I'm free. I don't teach things that are not beyond that is outside Africa. It is coming from Africa. Let's say, for example, the idea of freedom. People say freedom as, of course, it is European idea. We may say like that with French Revolution and so forth. But you could see already sort of freedom in the book, 1130, coffin text spell. And the idea of rebellion and revolution, because you are part of that world. Really, I go back to, Miguel, the King Miguel in the 15th century, and then end up between the two revolutions, even the end. So you have the American Revolution, you have French Revolution, and you have Asian Revolution of Toussaint Louverture. It means, and then again, it is African, who try to make people understand that freedom is not, it's not a privilege of a culture. Everybody fight for dignity and freedom, you know, until that March of Washington, 1964. So it means, really, I go back and forth. So the past and today, you see, and then that's helps me to understand because of Africa, history of Africa. It is we have a huge history, a huge history. It's not really someone can master it. It's huge archaeological. I want to say, just close to here, I did an excavation with a friend. So we find what is a pot. It may go back to 5th century BC. You see, but we don't know who belong to, which people belong to. So now this, you know, it's not just, we're thinking, afresh all those colonial data and things. We don't have to, to stay focused only on Egypt. I think the entire world, what is the entire Africa, from east and south and west, still it at the beginning. You need the researchers and scholars to make the sun speak, to make our stones speak, to make our drums speak. I'm a good player. I used to play drummers, and so it's just even my own shirt here. It is a text, you see. So thank you.
Indeed, indeed. And that's one of the things that we try to do here on the Mbongi, is what we call the show. And is to try to bring these different perspectives and learning opportunities about Africa. And I know, like, a lot of people are kind of fascinated with ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt, but sometimes I just use Egypt to bring them right back to West and Central
Mm,
Africa, and so
mm,
that those who are not familiar with the cultures can see the synthesis that or the commonalities that people like Dr. Shekhar Diop and Theophilo Benga and Dr. Chancellor Williams and others who have studied the continent as a whole find these commonalities uh, that illuminate various aspects of our histories and movements at that. And so I do appreciate the continued work that you're doing and the work that you have done. Matter of fact, it is I came across your book because I've been doing research for a number of years for a text that I'm writing titled "Religious Proselytization as a Form of Violence,"
mm,
and so that question of evil and conflict, came about as a result of that research. And one of the earlier texts that I read, which kind of brought so many more questions to mind, was that Jordan and Gabani text that I mentioned earlier, "Conflict of Minds." Uh, and so it is an honor to meet the people whose texts that I read and reference and works and the like, and I like to introduce them to my audience, so that now they, can be familiar with you, and now they're inspired to look deeper into the continent as well. So you have provided a lot of jewels, and I know that people will have many questions to ask and the like. And I don't know if you do social media or anything to that nature, but if people wanted to, send you a question, um, pertaining to anything that we discussed here, is there a way that they can get in contact with you? I know you have a uh, what is it, an academia.edu page, so you can see a few of his articles on his academia.edu
Yeah, that's
page.
right. Yes.
Uh, but is there anywhere else, or how can they contact you?
Well, I have a LinkedIn, but it is
Uh,
academia. But I think I have such an overload that we know workload that I'm a bit afraid that you see how it was.
I understand.
But I think you have academia link, even with email,
Mm,
and now that email we may ask questions. But I would like to have someone that may help me to the social thing. But he has to sort it himself. Not that I have to do it myself. I
indeed.
wish I could have a particular assistant, personal assistant who could do it.
Indeed. We might
Yeah.
have to help you
What
get
what
one, if not even a virtual assistant.
what
Uh,
can you suggest? I'm willing to accept some of the ideas. You know.
hey, yeah, we can find somebody. So if
Mm,
because you were kind of in the same boat. It's another Congolese scholar out of
mm,
Kinshasa, Dr.
mm.
Chilima Lima Mukinge.
Uh,
Um, he's a of the Baluba people. He's a Muluba.
yes, yes, you
And
like Bilolo. It's
yes,
same. Yes.
I just keep running into Luba folks, so that's just the
You like
it's just
our
fate.
own president, our current president, the same group.
you know.
Uh,
Uh, but he's kind of in the same boat. So I helped publish a book of his, Muntu Wan Zombie,
what was
man
Zambia?
that
Yeah. Man of
man
God.
as God's
Mm,
special creation. That's the
mm,
subtitle he gave it. And
mm,
so he goes through Luba wisdom
mm,
traditions and
mm,
and philosophy, and he
mm,
contrasts it with some other groups
mm,
in West and
mm,
Central Africa as
mm,
well. So it's a good text.
mm,
But I got to build him a website, so
mm.
that so maybe I can just kind of create
The
a
coach.
just a one website for which
Yeah.
all of y'all are a part of the website, and then we'll have
uh,
somebody run the website so it can go through, and
Oh yeah.
they can communicate through it, uh,
Yeah.
for you all, because I think that'd be a good thing.
Yes.
Uh,
And then, for example, they say, look, there is a question. Maybe you have to come aboard and reply. Let's say with the email, with the WhatsApp. Look,
exactly.
why there is something there. You can just have a look and reply, and then maybe. Mm. But I think definitely I would try to have
Indeed,
a
indeed.
what is it a Facebook page. I was wondering, but maybe I've to end up there. Mm.
We could set that up as well, and we'll just have somebody run it and do that
Mm.
same things. Send
Mm.
you a
Mm.
somebody asks this
Mm.
question, when you have
Mm.
time, can you answer it, and we'll
Mm.
post it, on your behalf.
Mm.
And
Thank you.
and
Mm.
or if you have a family member, because I know, like with Dr. Mukinge, sometimes we'll
Mm.
have his daughter, you know,
Mm.
kind of run some things, but she got her own,
Yeah.
life and things as
Okay.
well too. So
Yes, yes. I will think about it. I think you are
mm,
right.
indeed.
Mm. Mm.
Well, is there anything that, and I know we didn't get to talk about the kind of the interfaith
Mm.
uh, work that you have done or any kind of discussions. So,
Mm,
but if there's anything that you want to talk about that we haven't,
mm,
and kind of close out on it, you have the floor.
yes. Maybe we can do that later on. I wrote an article on fundamentalism and violence in African traditional religion. I think I posted on academia page. Did you see something like that? It's on a multilingual text in French and
Yes,
Spanish.
yes, I've seen. Matter of fact, I just had it up uh,
Mm.
here not too long ago, but yes, but that article, yes, views on fundamentalism from African
That's
traditional
right.
religion.
Yes, and
Uh,
then 2 years ago it was an interview, and then like this, and then from that interview, a German friend wrote an article. I think something can we learn something from some from African traditional religion. Maybe that can be another topic on the next. This time I think it will be much. It will be less. Really, I have to thank you for your patience and your understanding. At that point, I was really ashamed that how that I could do that to you and sir until that December when Doctor um, who else Vanessa said, "Do you know asarimhotep?" I said, "Yes, I had." Then I'm sorry. Thank you for that. So we can do that. We can have another topic.
Indeed, indeed. Well, as we say here in the United States, everything is done on God's time. So
Yeah.
it was just meant to happen now instead
Mm,
of earlier. So I'm
mm,
grateful
mm,
to have you
mm,
here, and I know this audience is
mm, mm,
grateful to have you as well. So I do
mm,
appreciate your
mm,
time, and again, I know it's been a long day where you've at. So I
mm.
appreciate you, even after all of that, to come here and spend an hour with us. So I thank you very much,
It
and
was a pleasure.
I
Mm.
wish you well, and may you have a blessed evening. And again, condolences to the family, and
Thank you.
uh,
Mm.
and so for those of you who are listening, we have been having a very fruitful conversation with Dr. Kemboly, and he has written the text, "The Question of Evil in Ancient Egypt," which you can get on Amazon.com and other, book retailers. I may have actually gotten this directly from the publisher itself, but I believe it is on Amazon as well.
I
And go
sorry,
ahead.
answer. I heard that now the book is out of print. I think we need to republish it again. So I think we'll see how we can print some copies, some more copies. As it disappeared. So I then try maybe even a translation into French because many people here have difficulties to read, English. So my own people don't know me very well. All that issue.
That's funny because because I introduce a lot of Congolese scholars to
Yes.
my community. Everyone there publishes in French. So like
Yes.
right now, like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, another
Yes.
Mboli,
Yes.
um, this
Mboli.
Jean Claude Mboli. I don't
Jacob
know,
Mboli. Mm.
but he's out of the
Mm.
what's the other
That
Congo?
one.
The Republic of Congo.
Yes.
Uh,
Brazzaville.
yeah,
Mm.
um, and he is of Zande and Songo ancestry.
Ah,
Um,
if he's Zande Shonga Sensei, it should be from my Congo.
okay,
Yes.
yes,
Yes. 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 Mm.
and so he wrote this text in
Mm.
French, the origin
Mm.
of African languages, and so
Mm.
I'm in the middle of translating this 630
Oof.
page book into
Yeah.
English
Okay.
because I keep talking about it, and
Mm.
everybody's like, it's in French. We
Yes.
can't read French,
Mm.
and so
Mm.
actually you have the opposite
Yes. 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 Yes.
issue with
Mm.
your
Mm.
text. So,
Mm.
but yeah, that's the nature of the game. So this is in English. So folks, y'all, if y'all can find it and get it, That's why I recommend once y'all see me throw a book up like this, get it immediately, even if you're not going to read it immediately, just in case the book goes out of print. But again, thank you, and hopefully we can get you back and we can go deeper into some other topics. And with that said, we are out. God bless y'all. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Good answer. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Tokyo wanna those that what's up? Feeling like I dropped the draw for and caught Uno. Came to kick the door while the game in judo. Pin game low, that's why they give me kudos. Inspired by the 3-0, 595 check it for pair flight. Hit the turnpike, slide to a baseline. Gotta sound like I just hit the 85. Oh, I'm so ready, by enemies necessary. We gon' be legendary. Hold up, about to grow the payrolls. If you see the vision and you're with it, you should say so. Cause we about building, elevating the millions.
This program was created with the love and support of all our Patreon members and subscribers. If you are not a member yet and would like to see more content like this, consider becoming a member today. The link is in the description of this video. Your support is greatly appreciated.